Okay, hopefully I'm not muted. It looked like it said muted on my side. So let me know if you can't hear me. But welcome to the chat. So glad to have you guys back another evening. I started a little bit early here, just a minute or so. I want to make sure that I go live on Instagram and YouTube. So let me do that now. Okay, it looks like we are okay. Hopefully, you can hear me. Let me know if there's any audio issues or anything like that. But welcome back. I'm so glad to see you guys. This was a instant decision to switch things up a little bit. I decided not to do a video tonight, but to do a live chat. So that's what I've kind of decided to do. I think next Friday I'm going to do a video for Friday and a video for Saturday and give myself a break. So a lot of you also asked me the other day during our conversation if I would talk about traumatic memory. And so this has been a topic that's been requested of me for months, and I just haven't been able to fit it into the topics we've had. So, in tonight's brief live chat, I think I'm going to go ahead and just tackle this whole issue of memory from trauma. I do want to highlight, though, and you may find this very helpful tonight, that there are various kinds or types of amnesia or loss of memory because of a traumatic experience. So I'm just going to highlight tonight what that looks like, what each kind of memory loss due to trauma there is. I also want to highlight the different causes of loss of memory, loss of childhood memory, loss of memories before a specific trauma. And then I can highlight what's going on in your brain. So we're going to get to all of that in tonight's brief live chat. Let me go back and just welcome some of you. I see you guys signing on little by little. I'm going to say hello, Beatrix. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you. Says that this is a very interesting topic about memory loss. Looking forward to hearing about it. Thanks for your videos. You're welcome. And thank you for being live with me another night. Longevity rituals. I don't remember seeing you. So welcome to the chat. Welcome to our live chat for tonight. Glad to have you. I'm probably going to mess this name up, this screen name. Sholin Monk says, sounds like a good, interesting topic. That's good to know. Welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight as well. Sam T, hello and welcome. I also see I see Real Talk with D podcast. Hello. Thank you for that comment. I think that's really sweet of you. And welcome to the chat. Annabis, the opener of ways. I haven't seen you in so long. So welcome back. Courtney Frazier and Dawn One, hello and welcome. Live Life, Deb and Sherry's Jubilee, welcome back to the chat. So glad to have you tonight. I also see Free Live, T Mac and She Prays, hello and welcome. I see Annie Welker. Excuse me, good evening to you as well and welcome to the chat. Mama Lena. And I don't know, did I say hi to you, Courtney Frazier? I hope I did. Hello and welcome. Glad to see all of you guys. And I'm sure more of you will sign on as we go through the chat. I was giving you a little bit of background for those who just signed on as to why I decided to do another live chat tonight. I'm hoping to wrap up within 30 minutes or so, but wanted to give you guys, thank you, Cherry's Jubilee. I'm going to try that in a second here. I wanted to give you guys just some information on traumatic memories and memory loss and what's going on when you've had a traumatic experience and you can't remember. You just can't remember your childhood. You can't remember what happened before the trauma. And then I'm going to highlight some different forms of amnesia that you could go through just because of a traumatic situation. Cherry's Jubilee was trying to help me pronounce the name. Where'd you go, Cherry's Jubilee? There you are. Shaolin? I think it's Shaolin. I hope so. I don't know. Forgive me if that's not correct, but I see you just signed back on. Welcome. Glad to have you. I also see Elephant Shoe 22. Hello and welcome to the chat. Let's jump into this, okay, guys? Because I think it's a lot to cover within 38 minutes. So let's jump in, okay? Have any of you ever heard the term episodic memory? Episodic memory. Basically, this is the idea that your mind can remember specific events like Christmas, vacation, that Halloween party I went to back in 1922, that graduation dinner I went to back in 2002, that guy I dated the other day and decided to not ever call back again. Episodic memory. We all have episodic memory. But research suggests that episodic memory can actually be disrupted if there's a traumatic experience. It's going to be very difficult to remember anything that you may have gone through if you have had a traumatic experience that has derailed your episodic memory. Now, what's interesting about episodic memory is you can actually remember what has happened between the ages of 0 and 3. That's interesting because I can't remember anything before the age of 6 or 7. But some people have a very good memory where they can remember anything that happened to them between the ages of 0 and 3, and that's episodic memory. For most of us, we can again remember events, but sorry guys, it looks like my camera jumped a little bit. Sorry about that. For most of us, we can remember specific events, but if you've had a traumatic situation and it's kind of derailed your neurological processes, then it's going to be difficult for you to remember what happened prior to the trauma. Okay, so it's going to make episodic memories really difficult. I want you to keep in mind, too, as we go through this live chat tonight, something known as repressed memory theory. And basically what that is, it's a Sigmund Freud concept. It's psychological trauma that can cause the experience of feeling like your memories prior to the trauma have been blocked, and your memories of the trauma have been blocked as well. And so Sigmund Freud basically laid this theory out in a book. I'm going to put it in the description box for you so that you can go ahead and take a look at it or buy it if you want to learn more about this. But he basically said that repressed memories was the result of a lot of issues that his patients had. And he felt that repression of memories was almost like the brain's defense mechanism against whatever traumatic situation had occurred. And I think I can go with that. I can go with that. Not a fan of Sigmund Freud, but I could definitely go with that. I can see how a traumatic experience can cause a repression of memories to the point of no memories existing at all. I'm going to give you an example. I once had a client, this was back in 2009. I had a client who had a severe, and I mean a severe 7 years of trauma, from being kidnapped to being held against her will, or held hostage, to enduring rape, enduring sexual trauma as a child. She also had a miscarriage a couple times. I mean, this poor girl, she was 27 years old. She went through a lot. But what happened to her is, after she emerged from all of that trauma and started to get treatment for complex PTSD, I feel like my camera is frozen again. I'm sorry, guys. Not sure why it's doing that. I just wonder if my camera's overheating. I don't know. I apologize, but we're going to keep going. And so when she was getting treatment for complex PTSD, she recognized throughout the treatment that there was some kind of extra burden on her. And she would come to me every session and say, Tamara, I just feel like there's something that happened in my childhood, but I can't put my finger on it. I have this internal sense that I was abused or sexually traumatized, or I was neglected or something. I see my camera again kind of freezing there. Not sure if that's me. If it keeps doing that, I may restart the chat. So don't mind me. I'm going to just keep talking. I apologize for that happening. Okay. So, she would come in and say, I feel like something's going wrong with me. I feel like, something is just not me. And she truly believed that she was repressing some kind of traumatic memory that happened to her in childhood. So keep in mind, as we go through this live chat, that you could have some repressed memories, and you have this internal sense that something is there, but you can't really pinpoint it or put your finger on it. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind during this brief live chat is the idea of false memories. That sometimes we could be exposed to so much trauma that we believe something happened that didn't happen at all. And sometimes false memories are unintentional and sometimes they are intentional. So, what I mean by that is sometimes false memories are a repression of something that really happened, and you're having a little bit of a hard time piecing together the parts of the memory. So it kind of comes across as a false experience. You may have had bits and pieces of an experience and you tried to piece them together, but it's not true. Or maybe you're experiencing some intense kind of emotion that makes you believe that you had a specific memory that never happened at all. And thirdly, I'm going to add this in here for the third component of this. False memories can also be a way to manipulate the system, for example, right? Saying that you have trauma that you don't have, using false memories to deceive and get what you want, right? So keep those three things in mind as we go along through this live chat. Now, let me highlight what can cause repression of childhood memories, repression of memories prior to a trauma. The number one thing, and this is something that research talks about a lot, the number one thing that gets in the way of our memory of what has happened before the trauma is childhood trauma. Childhood trauma really does create a whirlwind of confusion sometimes. And it's hard once you become an adolescent, once you become a teenager, maybe I should say a younger adult, so more like 18, 19, 20, or once you become a full-blown adult, sometimes it is hard to go back and tease and pull apart that childhood trauma. And so because of that, the burden of that trauma can cause your memories to fade. And there's a word for this. We're going to get into that in a little bit here. The other thing is a mundane experience. Maybe as a child, you were having, all these unstimulating or not so interesting experiences, and somehow it just kind of clouds your memory of the trauma or clouds your memory of what has happened to you in childhood. Research suggests that some people just simply don't remember their childhood experience because it was so mundane. Believe it or not, that's actually something research has highlighted for a while. I'll make sure to put that article in the description box for you so that you can have it. The other thing is family status. Sometimes you just can't remember your childhood because it's too chaotic, right? Maybe there were foster kids in your home. Maybe adoption was going on in your family. Maybe you were a military family and you were bouncing all over the place like my family did while I was growing up. And sometimes that can get in the way of childhood memories, and you just strictly can't remember what happened, having that chaotic, unsettled life. There's also the intensity of the trauma that can get in the way of you remembering your childhood. Let's say, for example, you are sexually molested as a 10-year-old. You may start to repress that memory, or you may have a really hard time remembering at the age of 30 that even happened to you in the first place. And one of the reasons why is because the intensity of that trauma could really hold your brain down in quotation marks. It can really cause your brain to just collapse, right? And your brain says, you know what? I can't deal with this. It's too much. I'm going to put up a defensive wall and I'm going to say that never happened. Or I'm going to repress this so much that it's like it never happened, So sometimes the impact of trauma can erase our childhood experiences. There's also the age at which the trauma occurred that can get in the way. So let's say you had a traumatic experience at 3.5 years old. Do you think that maybe by 21, you're going to remember what that trauma entailed? Probably not. Do some people remember? Absolutely. But sometimes they don't. And so it's like the trauma never happened in the first place because the age at which it happened was so young. I had a family last year. They're no longer with me. They needed a higher level of care. But I had a family with me where the 7-year-old daughter didn't even remember that at the age of 3.5, she was sexually molested by her brother. And her father also molested her when she was in his care outside of the home. And she didn't remember both experiences because she was so young. And when her mom put her into psychotherapy with one of their former therapists, I actually pulled that therapist's records. I said, could you please forward me your file so I'll know how to manage this case? The therapist sent me the records of this child, and I read in the report that the therapist suggested that the mother not even take the 7-year-old to therapy because, quotation marks, there's no sense in bringing up these repressed memories that she may not remember herself. And so here she is today. She's probably like 8.5, 9 years old, and she probably doesn't even know that she's been sexually abused. Now, here's what's scary about trauma memories, though. Sometimes they can be repressed up into a certain age, right? And you hit age 20 and boom, there's all your traumatic memories. And it can literally hit you like a ton of bricks. And something's going on in your heart, something's going on in your mind, something's going on in your soul, and you just don't know what to do about it. It's like a restlessness or a pain that's just there on the inside of you, and you don't know what to do with that energy, that stress, right? And so you may be the kind of individual like this 7 or 8.5-year-old individual. You may be the kind of person who goes to therapy later and says, I think something happened to me. I need to work with my repressed memories. And so I have a feeling that this family is going to go through that because this little girl should have had some treatment. But sometimes the age at which the treatment occurred, the trauma occurred, can get in the way. The other thing that can get in the way is the busyness of your life. You may be so busy in everyday life that your childhood memories, your childhood trauma is just completely erased. We are too busy in this world. I think you can probably agree with that. It's like something's happening every second, every minute, every hour, every day. And that kind of clouds your view, and it gets in the way of your childhood memories. And so research suggests that the busyness of everyday life, the expectations that are held for us, can cause us to forget the very things that have happened to us in the past or in a traumatic sense. Okay, let me pause here and go to the chat box and see what I have missed, because you guys were just chatting away, which I love. Yes. Thank you, Cherry's Jubilee. Absolutely. I appreciate you trying to help me. I'm glad you're back on tonight, by the way. So glad you're back. Okay, let me welcome some more people. Scapegoat number 90, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. I don't know if I said hello to you, but Mama Lena, hello and welcome. Deb, I think I said hello to you. If I didn't, welcome to the chat. Sometime I don't remember what happened like 2 seconds ago. Robert Redmond's Clip Channel, hello and welcome back. Glad to see you in another live chat tonight. I don't know if we're going to make it to 6:30, but I'm going to try. Kyra Knows 144, hello and welcome. Glad to see you as well. Deb says, my earliest memory was at 9 months, but I remember a lot of stuff from early childhood, from very early childhood. That's amazing, because I can't remember what happened before the age of 7. I just can't. Now, again, we may have some differences in what we remember and how we remember things because of who we are, right? My mind is constantly going. I'm constantly thinking. There's something always going on up here. That's where all these live chat ideas come from. Oh, I think I'm freezing again, aren't I? Okay, I'm gonna try not to touch my desk. See what happens if I don't just jar anything. But my brain is always going, guys. That's where all these live chats are coming from. And so my mind is always speeding at 90 miles per hour. But that may prevent me from being able to remember certain things in my childhood. Deb, you may be different. Maybe you process things a lot more clear and fervently than I do. And so that allows you that ability to think at that age. So I'm just using this as an example to show you that sometimes we are different in what we remember because of who we are, how our brains work, our genes, what's going on in our life, things like that. A lot of you have asked me behind the scenes, why can't I remember my childhood? That's mainly because of that, right? Genetic predispositions, genetic changes and differences, what's going on in your life, something you may or may not have experienced. It's all variable, Okay. Shamika Williams, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says, I am unable to remember my childhood that took place with my mother. However, I can remember every time I spent the summer with my grandmother and grandfather in North Carolina. How can I heal like this? Yeah, that's difficult. The best thing that I can suggest for you, Shamika Williams, is to find a therapist who understands post-traumatic stress disorder, who understands complex PTSD, and talk about the fact that you just don't remember. You guys can get into repression of memories. Maybe you can get into EMDR therapy so that you can begin to explore what's going on in your mind. So that's the best thing that I could suggest for you, Shamika Williams. Nancy Conway, hello and welcome to the chat. Thank you so much for that. Stay strong as well. Thank you. I love that encouragement. Courtney Fraser, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Says, is medical PTSD a real thing? Yes, I think it is. Let me just veer off here for just a little bit. Medical PTSD is basically the idea that something medically has happened and you've kind of been traumatized by a medical procedure, not being heard, being gaslit by medical providers, things like that. There is no diagnostic, what's the word that I could use, criteria or labeling that we could use to describe this. So most lay people call it medical PTSD, but there's no clinical diagnosis of that whatsoever. Mama Lena says, yeah, that's really weird with me too. I can remember some things from my first year, but then I missed some years in my youth, result of trauma. Yep. And I'm going to tell you what that is just here in a minute. Yep, you're going to want to know what that is. Caleb Reed, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to see you again. Live Life, hello and welcome. Glad you're back on. Says, I had early traumatic experiences, which not only created memory blocks, but put me in the freeze response that I'm still struggling to get out of. The one thing that has helped was traveling nonstop. Yeah, sometimes when you are like thrust into that fight or flight system, what happens is your brain kind of goes into overdrive, and it's a little bit difficult to remember because now your brain and your body is using up resources to fight or to freeze, right? So let me explain this. This might be a little helpful if I explain the fight or flight, what's going on in the body. So we have the central nervous system, which consists of two components. One is the brain and the other is the spinal cord, right? So envision this. The brain and the spinal cord goes down the bony structure of the back. Within those two systems, we have the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, right? We have those two things. The sympathetic nervous system is like a gas pedal. And when we are thrown into fight or flight, that gas pedal, it's like slamming your foot on the gas pedal in a car and the engine revs up. And so when you are thrust into fight or flight mode, your body, your brain, your stress response, your trauma response, it all gets sped up like you are stepping on the gas pedal. And when you're in that mode of existence, that's where remembering certain things is going to be really difficult. Even if you're just sitting in your therapist's office talking about your childhood trauma, you're still going to feel like you're in that fight or flight mode where everything is sped up. Your heart rate is sped up, blood is moving through your veins in your brain. You know, there's chemicals in your brain that's all creating these memories and processes that you can't see and feel, right? Your heart is experiencing something. Your body's going through something. Sorry, guys, look at my camera froze again, but your body is going through something. Your whole system is just in fight or flight mode. Okay, that's the gas pedal. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is like the brake pedal. It's like slamming your foot in a car on a brake pedal, and the parasympathetic nervous system is that brake system. That's when your body calms down and fight or flight mode goes away, it dissipates. And so that's when your memories can start to come back. Have you ever wondered why, when things are peaceful in your life, that you sometimes have traumatic memories that come up? Most likely that's happening because you're in a safe environment, you're in a happy relationship, you're doing really good in your life, something is happening to you that's beautiful, right? All of that is in the parasympathetic area, that brake pedal mode. And so your memories can just start hitting you and really hitting you like a ton of bricks when you're in that cool down, calm down mode. So live life. I'm glad that you said that because that's exactly what a lot of people go through. John Tracy, hello and welcome, says repressed memories return in your elder years. Sometimes they do. Repressed memories can come up in adolescence, can come up in young adulthood, late adulthood, and it can definitely come up in senior citizen age or older adulthood, depending on what's going on in your life, too. Hello, Liberty Can. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you in tonight's live. Yeah. So Liberty Can is saying that these memories coming back, I think this is what you're saying, is like a child having a huge piece of furniture dropped on them. Yeah, sometimes it can feel like that for sure. For sure. Cherry Jubilee says, I remember at 6 weeks because I saw my father who died when I was 10 weeks. When I was 10 weeks, my Lord, I'm sorry to hear that, Cherry Jubilee. I think you mentioned this once before on the channel. She goes on to say, he saved me from my mother in the tub. My goodness, that's something. Wow. Cherry Jubilee says memory comes back when your brain feels you can deal with it now. Yeah, absolutely. And that's usually when you're in that parasympathetic space where you're calm and things are feeling okay, and you're feeling safe and happy and maybe even just in control of your body. Courtney Fraser says, I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Yeah, I'm going to tell you why in just a second here. Free Live says, hello and welcome to the chat. If I haven't welcomed you already, Free Live says, I daydream a lot and sometimes I forget to get my words out or I can't think of the right words. How can I improve this? I feel like my memory is blocking out many events in my childhood. Yeah, it's not really something that I can answer. It's not like a one and done thing. Like, I'm going to give you the answer. Here's how you do it. It depends on what trauma you had, what kind of trauma you had, how long the trauma lasted, whether, it impacted you a great deal or not. I mean, all of those are variables that I need to know. But I can bring back to the channel at some point some ways that you can get back repressed memories. So hang tight for that. I'm going to come back with a live chat because, you guys asked me to do these kind of live chats. And guess what? Boom, I produced them for you. So hang tight. I promise we'll do something on that free live. Kevin the Oculus, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. You are not late. I'm probably not going to make it to 6:30, probably like 6:38. So I'm striving to I'm striving to make it at in time at 6:38. Thank you, Robert Redmond's Clip Channel. Thank you for that. Thank you. All right, let's jump back into the content, guys. Let me tell you what's going on here in your mind. Now, here are a couple of things that you may want to know about losing some of your childhood memories, experiencing intense stress, trauma, being in fight or flight mode, and losing your ability to remember. The most common type of amnesia, which is basically a loss of memory. And it could be a trauma-based amnesia or a stress-based amnesia, where things in your brain just kind of like leave your mind because of the traumatic or stressful experience that you've had. The most common is what's known as infantile amnesia. Infantile amnesia. And what that is it's a natural fade of memory over time. For some people, I think I froze again, didn't I? Oh my God, this is so frustrating. Let me see if I can make this work without ruining anything. Okay, we're back. Infantile amnesia is a common form. It's a natural form where, we kind of lose our memory over time depending on our age. You may be able to remember when you were 3 months old, 5 months old or 3 years old, but then over time, that's going to fade a little bit for you. People who have traumatic and stressful memories may experience this kind of amnesia or loss of memory much quicker or earlier than most people. Okay. The next form is what's known as localized amnesia. And, basically that's an inability to remember a specific event, right? So that's why it's called localized, because you can't remember a specific event. Let's say, for example, your mom was a narcissist. She was an overt narcissist. She was abusive to you, hurtful to you, mean and cold. And all you remember for 15 years of your life is being up under this mother. Well, let's say, for example, you develop complex PTSD as a result of the trauma from your mom and maybe some other relationships in your life. You may start to experience localized amnesia as you begin to recall those painful memories, as you begin to search in your history about what happened to you. And it may be really difficult for you to pinpoint when something happened because your localized memories have totally left you. You can't remember a specific event in time. Okay. And this is the kind of memory that can really cause some trouble in your world because let's say, for example, you're going through a court case and you're starting to experience localized amnesia. You can remember what happened back in 1922. Something may have happened, but you can't pinpoint it because the trauma and the stress has been so intense that it has caused a loss of localized memory. Okay. Selective memory is the next thing that you can experience from traumatic experience. It's basically being able to, remember certain aspects, but losing other pieces. So an example of selective amnesia is this, that, maybe you were physically, abused as a child. I'll use that as an example. Your dad's a psychopath. He physically abused you, physically harmed the pets in the home. He was just ornery, just mean and miserable. Let's say that you can remember those instances where he did beat you, he did hit you, he did harm you, but you can't remember certain aspects of it. Like you can't remember what he beat you with. You just know he beat you. You can't remember if you had bruises, but you were in a battle with him. You can't remember if you fought him back or if he started the issue. You can't remember certain aspects. So you lose bits and pieces of the traumatic experience, and that is selective amnesia. The other kind of amnesia is continuous amnesia. Now, this is interesting, okay? And here's why. Because continuous amnesia is I don't have the ability to remember what happens from 1 minute to the next. I completely lose what just happened. And it's almost like I'm being reintroduced to people, life, and situations because of my traumatic experience and what it's done to my brain. So let me give you an example of this. Phineas Gage. Do you guys remember Phineas Gage? I don't even think I have my cell phone to show you. Phineas Gage is, if you look up Phineas Gage and railroad incident, he is the individual who was a railroad worker, and an iron pole in an accident shot up through I think it was his left part of his head. So shot up through the left frontal lobe, excuse me. This is the frontal lobe. It shot up through his eye, through the frontal lobe area, and it created a form of continuous amnesia. So anytime his wife would come into the room after maybe stepping out for 2 seconds, she would come in the room and he would say, "Oh my God, how have you been?" And it was like he was learning who she was. For the first time. Every time he would see her, she'd step out of the room and come back, and he would greet her like he had never seen her before, and that's continuous amnesia. Your brain continuously kind of forgets bits and pieces of things, or forgets the entire thing, and it makes it really difficult for you to hold on to what happened a couple minutes ago. Generalized amnesia is this kind of traumatic amnesia where you have a hard time identifying who you are, who you were, and what you are. Right? You may absolutely change everything about yourself. This can also be referred to as dissociative fugue, and I can put some things in the description box for you too, so you'll know what this is. But if you've had a really intense trauma, complex PTSD or PTSD, you can experience generalized amnesia, where you completely lose touch with who you are. You don't know who you are. You don't know what life you lived before the trauma, and you have no attachment to your past because of how intense that traumatic experience really was. Let's pause here, guys. I'm going to go to the chat box and see if I've missed anything. So let me keep going. In the chat box. So Kevin the Oculus says, don't remember most of my childhood, but being 5 years old, I remember what happened, but no details, no emotions. Mother tried to unalive herself while I was there. Yeah. Yes, I get that. I just have to let it sink in for a second. So, don't remember most of my childhood, but being 5 years old, I remember what happened, but no details, no emotions. That's kind of like a form of amnesia. And I guess you could say that these are repressed memories for you, Kevin the Oculus. Bits and pieces are kind of repressed, and maybe those bits and pieces that are repressed are the most important, and that's what's scary about the loss of memory after a traumatic situation. You just don't know what bits and pieces you are missing to help fit the puzzle of your traumatic experience together. That's the scary part of this. Deb says sometimes forgetting is protective. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There are some situations where forgetting what happened to you in your childhood really is protective. And I think that's what the therapist was trying to do that I mentioned earlier for my 7-year-old client, previous client. She was saying in her record, it doesn't make sense to create a trauma. She doesn't remember being sexually violated, so leave it there. And I think this therapist felt like this was protective in some ways. You know, I get that. I do. So Deb, you are right. Alexa SS, hello and welcome to the chat. Glad to have you tonight. Says my adoptive son cannot remember his childhood, and upon adoption, we received his file, and there was an incident where bio mom tried throwing him on a train track or on the train tracks, excuse me, at 4 years old. He has no recollection. That is horrific. In this way, Alexa SS, if I could get your name out, I would say that this is protective. Then, I would leave it at that. It's protective for him, as protective as long as it can be. Now, he may turn 25 years old and remember it all of a sudden. Something jars that memory, but until then, this is protective for him. That's a fantastic example. Caleb Reed says, how do you properly heal without compressing feelings? This is huge since my family is extremely narcissist. How do you properly heal without compressing feelings? Yeah, that's a difficult question. That's a whole other live chat. I think number one, just being open to the fact that something's wrong in the first place. And the more you learn, the more open you become, because then you're kind of unraveling the things in your life that need to be unraveled. That's my quick and short answer to that. Thank you so much, Caleb Reed. I appreciate that. Dragon Man Sasson, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. She Praise says, our brains are amazing how they protect us, but what a shock when the repressed memories hit. Thanks for discussing. Yes, you're welcome. And you are right. It is like a shock. A lot of you have been saying that tonight. It's like a ton of bricks, it's like, a huge tree just hitting you. And it is because your brain is very interested in how it processes trauma. Your brain can completely forget the trauma. It could suppress the traumatic or repress the traumatic memory for a certain period of time, or your brain can emerge in a healthier way once you pass 5 years of age, right? Maybe you had a trauma at 3 years old, but you don't remember not being able to sleep, not being able to think well, being colicky, being, miserable, moody. All of those symptoms you would get from PTSD can be experienced at 3 years old, but you may hit 5 and it all goes away. So the way that the brain processes traumatic memories is one big research study. That's the way I'm going to put that. Sh- I'm going to mess this up again. Shalyn Monk, hello and welcome. I can't remember if I welcomed you. Welcome back to the chat. Says, like to say it's my first time on. I thought so. I don't remember seeing you. And by far, she a good therapist. She knows what she's talking about. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And welcome. Glad to have you on. John Tracy says 9 months. Is that possible? Hmm. Remembering 9 months of age? Yes, I think so. Some people can remember 9 months of age. I think that's what you're asking me. I'm not sure. I hate when my camera freezes. I'm sorry, guys. Bryn McDonald, hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Says on the other side of the coin, I feel like I have a lot of memories, many of which are positive, which makes me question if things were as bad as my body remembers. Right. And so I'm glad you brought that up. So there's the detachment between mind and body. And sometimes that can happen. Sometimes your body is going through a stress response, excuse me, fight or flight mode, or some kind of trauma response, but all you remember are the good memories. And sometimes that's a defense mechanism. Sometimes that's repression. And other times, that's your body saying you were up under some intense trauma or stress, but your brain is just not able to access that right now. But it doesn't invalidate what happened to you, you know? I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a whole new live chat, by the way. Courtney Fraser says, I am unable to remember much of my life because I've had so many traumas in my life. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Sometimes you can. So, in the case of complex PTSD, you could have a trauma at 5, a trauma at 7, a trauma at 10, 15, 18, 20, 25. Boom, there's complex PTSD because now you've had multiple traumas over many, many years and many developmental milestones. And even still, you can't remember. You can't remember, you know? You have symptoms of PTSD and complex PTSD, but you can't remember everything that's happened to you. Okay, let's jump back into these forms of traumatic amnesia or loss of memory. So I think my camera froze again. I don't know why. I think my camera hates when I do 2 live chats in a row. That's what it is. I don't know what's going on, guys. I apologize. So let's jump back in, okay? We left off at generalized amnesia, dissociative fugue. Let me mention what's called post-traumatic amnesia. This is basically a traumatic brain injury, and I have a form of TBI. I had a concussion last year. It was last June. And honestly, who would even have this kind of an accident? I'm going to share it with you. I was doing some gardening. I had on a ball cap. It was hot. It had to be about 100 degrees that day. I had two things in my hand, something over my shoulder, mud on my garden boots, and I was walking underneath my garage door, and I did not judge that correctly at all because I thought I was clearly under my garage door and I wasn't. So what did I do? I went under and stood up and bumped my head under the garage door, okay? I was seeing stars. Thank God I didn't pass out. But it led to months and months and months of rehabilitation, neurological appointments, a diagnosis of a sleep disorder. Like the list just went on for me. And so a traumatic brain injury of that measure, that would be considered a mild TBI for me, a concussion. But yours, for example, having a traumatic I think it froze again. I'm sorry, guys, having a traumatic experience in the past, your kind of TBI may be a little bit different, or even a little bit more intense. You know what I mean? So let me give you an example of this. Maybe you had a series of concussions a concussion as a child playing sports or falling or getting hit in the head or something, right? So you've had a series of TBIs, but maybe you also had I'm like an inch away from restarting this live chat. You think I should do it, guys? Just let me know in the chat box, okay? I'm sorry this keeps going out. I don't know what's going on. As long as you can hear me, I hope you can. Okay, so you may have had a series of concussions in your childhood, or you may have gotten hit in the head multiple times. On top of that, maybe you've had PTSD, complex PTSD. That is now a severe TBI with some additional features, and it can really mess you up. So it is considered post-traumatic amnesia. It's having a difficult time remembering something prior to the TBI. The other thing that you can experience is something known as transient global amnesia. And that is basically sudden short-term memory loss. It's instant. You can't remember. It's just gone. Something happens, boom, it's gone. It's short term and it is instant. It happens so quick. And the other thing, too, you may experience is something known as dissociative amnesia. Dissociative amnesia, and it hits you after a psychological trauma. You may have a really hard time remembering things because you dissociate, you pull away from reality psychologically. And so everything that has happened to you is kind of like you're walking in a dream. You're walking in a dream, because of the dissociating piece of that dissociative amnesia. Now, you may be wondering what's going on in my brain when these things happen. Let me mention what I mentioned in yesterday's live chat. There are two very important pieces to this puzzle, and one is the amygdala, which creates emotional memories for us. It kind of engages in our experiences with us, and it grabs a hold of the emotional experience and it creates an emotional memory. The amygdala. The hippocampus is like almost like a team player or a partner to the amygdala. And the hippocampus says, here's where you were, date and time, location of this emotional memory. So the amygdala grabs a hold of the emotional memory. I was sexually abused, for example, or I had a very good time at that Christmas party with my family, the first time in my life. That's emotional memory. The hippocampus comes along and says, here's where you were, here's the date, here's the time, here's what happened in this specific environment. So they work together. And so usually when it comes to autobiographical memories or hippocampal memories or just the storing of memories that may be traumatic, it is really hard for the amygdala and the hippocampus to hold on to those memories. It's really, really difficult, And that's because the trauma interrupts that process of remembering that emotional situation and remembering the context. Let me get some water, guys, okay? I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm thirsty. I don't know why I'm so thirsty today. I don't know why. Excuse me for that. But there's also another thing too, and I want to highlight this, that sometimes you may be experiencing what's known as confabulation. Confabulation is the idea that you've kind of taken this experience and let me just say really briefly, this is a disorder. It's false memory that is generated within you without deceit or intention. That's the best way I could put that. It's false memory that has been created within you that's not intentional or deceitful. You're not trying to lie. You're not trying to make up something. You're not trying to say that something happened to you that never happened. Confabulation is the idea that your brain somehow creates this memory that's false, and you feel like it's a real experience. It's a real experience to you, even though it isn't. Confabulation. So you may want to look that up. Let me go to the chat box, guys, and we're going to wrap up. We did not make it to 6:30, but that's all right. We're good. Caleb Reed says, I have a good feeling that you really care about our feelings and trauma. I do. So thank you, Caleb Reed, for that. That's so humbling and so kind. I guess you would call me an empath. I connect with my clients. We tend to be very close, but with healthy professional boundaries. And I really do love the work that I feel that I've been blessed to do and to share. And so, yes, there is a passion there because of that. It really is a privilege to be able to help you guys. So thank you for that, Caleb. That's so sweet. Robert Redmond's Clip Channel says, I think our brain tries to protect us from traumatic events when we are children, sometimes. And sometimes that's what we call childhood resilience. They are really good at remembering things if they need to and kind of pushing through the pain and getting through it onto the other side. And sometimes they forget it completely, and that is their way of protecting themselves unconsciously. The brain is very, very alive. very alive. Eliza Marie, hello and welcome to the chat. So glad to have you in tonight's live. Says, hi, I'm glad I finally caught you live. Thank you for having these discussions. You're welcome. And I'm glad that you came on. I love doing impromptu, sometimes Saturday lives, because I know some of you can't get on here. And if I use my Saturdays well, I can see all of you in a weekend. So Blue Galaxy, hello and welcome, says, I grew up in a blurry environment where there was a lot of pathological lying and dysfunction. Now I'm unpacking the trauma and I feel my personality is changing. Yeah, that can happen. That's your brain and your body moving through the traumatic experience. I would get The Body Keeps Score by Dr. Vanderkolt. I will put his book in the description box for you. A lot of you are probably well aware of the book. I would get that book, Blue Galaxy, so that you can learn how the brain and the body connect and what's going on as you uncover some of the trauma in your past. Poppy 444, hello and welcome. Glad to have you again in tonight's live. Says the traumatic memories come and go. I can't wait till I'm totally healed so that I can emotionally move on from this. I know it will take time. No contact from my family of origin and some work. Yes, sometimes no contact and some work is helpful, but here's the painful reality. And please do not be discouraged by this, but I'd rather be honest and authentic than to give you a false idea. You may never get rid of the memories, but here's what can happen. You could become so accustomed to the memory over time that you get stronger. It's going to be a part of your subconscious, but you can still live in a healthy way. You can still operate in a healthy way. You can still move forward and become resilient. You can heal, but that doesn't mean you're ever going to forget. It's kind of like losing somebody in your life to death that you love so very dearly. My grandmother, for example, that I lost 3 years ago unexpectedly, you know, she was more than I thought she was to me. Like we were like this literally from day one. Like my mom had me. The doctor put me on my mom's chest, and guess who was on the side reaching for me? My grandmother. That's how close we were. And so when she passed away, you know, it was like my world kind of froze and stopped. And so in the back of my mind, in my subconscious, that pain still remains. I'm never going to forget her. I'm never going to forget what happened the final days of her life. But I've gotten stronger over time. So that's probably what is going to happen to you, Pappy 444, and to a lot of you on this channel today, this live chat. You can have that painful memory, but you can also find a way to be strong and move on over time. That's the healing process. I hope that's helpful. Alicia Riggs, hello and welcome. So glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, can a healthcare provider that shows signs of Munchausen syndrome by proxy cause medical PTSD in patients by making up false symptoms and false diagnoses? Okay, I'm going to answer this in another live chat. I want to stay focused on repressed traumatic memories. I don't want to veer off. But we can cover that in a future live discussion. So I'm going to play this back later and take a picture of your comment. I'll come back to it. Drell's Healing Garden and Journey, hello and welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Welcome. Froze again, but I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. Dragon Man Assassin says, this may sound weird, but I don't want to closer than 1,000 miles of where I grew up. I think Dragon Man Assassin is saying, I don't want to be closer. I don't want to be closer than 1,000 miles of where I grew up. I don't blame you, because it just triggers all the trauma and all the memories, I'm sure. All right, just going through your comments before we sign off. It says, for me, it's hard because I was treated like I was wrong because I was forgetful, but I'm only bad on the short term. After a time, I remember perfectly, but no one believed me. Yeah, sometimes you can't remember the short term, but you can remember the long term. And there's a whole other live chat. We could do it some other time. Kiska Kuznetsova. I try my best on that one. Forgive me if it's not right. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Says, you always cover what I'm reading about or thinking about. That is awesome, right? Maybe we're kindred spirits. I don't know. Elizabeth Pepper, hello and welcome, says, does anyone else recall childhood memories in third person view? Yes, and that's another whole live chat that we could do at some point. There are some people that do remember it almost like they're experiencing their childhood memories from the outside in, you know what I mean? Like they're looking through a window, watching everything that they've experienced in the past. Yeah. Dawn One, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says the trauma has us wired differently. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. To Jin Orney, I hope I'm saying that right. Probably not. Welcome to the chat. I apologize for that. Yes, we will talk about, well, maybe emotional incest again, because I have a lot of that on my channel already. Thank you so much for the super chat, Blue Galaxy. You're so sweet. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I'm going to continue to keep going. Imagine Peace, hello and welcome. And thank you for that. My favorite of all time. I don't know why, it just is. It has so many good memories, I guess. Speaking of memories, thank you for that. That's so sweet. Thank you for the super chat. Robert Redmond's Clip Channel. Appreciate that always. Thank you. Says just a small token of gratitude for what you do. Thank you. I appreciate that. Real Talk with D podcast says, I get brain frozen at times. Yeah. And you're probably, there we go, frozen again. We're frozen again, aren't we? And there we go. I think it's going to come back this time. There we go. Hopefully you can hear me when it's freezing up. I don't know if you can or not. Sometimes you're in fight or flight mode when your brain freezes up. Real Talk with D podcast. Sometimes that's the issue. Princess, hello and welcome. So glad to have you. Welcome back. Kevin One Warfield, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Elizabeth Pepper says, childhood was very foggy for me until I went through a similar situation in adulthood. It didn't bring much memory back, but it brought feelings to the surface and made me pay attention to it. Horrible. Yes, absolutely. That is a very, very typical experience. Cheryl, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says, hi, Tamara. So happy to be here to hear this. Yeah, that's so great. Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good to see you too, Cheryl. Shamika Williams says, for me, becoming a mother myself brought me right back to my childhood. I began to feel like I was doing what I was doing with my children was beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes that can happen. Children just bring that out of you, right? And sometimes being a mom puts you in a position of understanding what happened to you because now you're almost reparenting yourself, raising your children. Isn't that interesting? Before we sign off, I'm going to just scroll through and make sure I got everybody. Cheryl says, I didn't start to remember until I was 57, but recently I just had a part that said she knows how to play the violin. I sure don't. Wow. I don't know what that could possibly mean, Cheryl. Excuse me, guys. I don't know, Cheryl. Would you consider that a false memory? I don't know. I don't know. We're going to come back to this topic for sure. Hi, Fairy Girl. Welcome to the chat. So glad to have you. We are definitely going to come back to this conversation because I think it deserves more than 57 minutes. I'm just scrolling through, trying to answer some of you. Imagine Peace says, my repressed memories make sense. I've recently been learning about CPTSD from past several years of narcissistic emotional abuse from marriage and extended family. Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey, isn't it? Imagine Peace. Yeah. Princess says, it's true. As I get older, I remember more. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been there. When I was 32, I started to remember things. When I was 35, I remembered some things. Now that I'm 39, sometimes I wake up and I lay there and I look up at the ceiling and I'm like, I remember that. But why in the world am I thinking this? It's 6 a.m. in the morning. So I don't know what's that all about. I don't know. Thank you, She Prays, for the super chat. Thank you so much. Love that contribution. Appreciate you. You never have to do that, but I love when you guys do. So thank you. Um, Real Talk with D podcast says you are helping me more and more. That's so great. It's a privilege for me. So thank you so much for saying that. And I'm glad this is helpful. I'm just going to highlight this comment on the screen for you guys. I totally love him. He's great. He's so down to earth and authentic. So you guys should go ahead and check him out. Havana, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. We're getting ready to sign off here, but I'm so glad to see you. Critter, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat as well. I don't know if I thanked you. I think I did it at the beginning when you signed on, but Imagine Peace, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for that contribution. That's so, so sweet of you. I really appreciate you for that. Anytime you guys do super chats, that means that I'm hitting close to home and that I can continue to provide this content to the channel. So that's why I always thank you guys for that. And it's just kind. You don't have to do it. Thank you, Havana. Thanks so much. Peace, please. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, awesome. Okay, you guys can hear me even when I freeze. She prays, says, so sorry that happened to you, Tam, but your dedication helping others even under those circumstances is so appreciated. Thank you. You're welcome. And that's so sweet. And I'm very, very glad to hear that. Very glad to hear that. Dawn One says, I love this topic. Great, because it's coming up again pretty soon here. Kim Maith, I hope I said that correctly, says, I'm so grateful that I recall some sweet childhood memories, but I'm grieving over the loss of feeling love and safety. Also, a lot of grief work is needed. When I journal, sometimes memories surface. Yeah, absolutely. I would suggest if you're not in therapy doing grief work, that you should probably find a therapist who understands repressed memories and PTSD and complex PTSD, and then work with your therapist where you could do some journaling and bring your journal to therapy. I have my clients do it all the time. The ones with complex PTSD, I say, let's get you a journal, or if it's a child, I'll buy them a journal and I'll put their name on it and I'll say, here, this is my gift to you. Let's journal every week. Bring your journal in once a week and let's talk about what you put in there, because it's going to create memories and feelings and we need to monitor those, So that's one way that you could deal with that. Courtney Frazier and all the dabs. I love it. Thank you for that. Thank you. That's so cute. Fairy Girl switched it up. She's not doing the dabs tonight. She's doing the hugs. It's like an inside joke, guys. That's really what it is. Welcome, ABC. Welcome. Glad to have you on tonight's live chat. Says, I'm just tuning in, but love the headline topic of this video. That's awesome. No, you are not late, Travis Hall. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you back tonight. Oh, Courtney Frazier, I love that. Thank you so much, Deb. I think so too. I think so too. Raymond Vincent Garcia Jr., hello and welcome back, says, I'm going to gently bring up this video to my wife. Yeah, gently do it, because I remember some of the things you've told us, Raymond Garcia. He says, I think she will find insight with this video. I really hope so. I hope so. The things you have shared over time, Raymond Vincent Garcia, I think she will benefit. I hope she will. Whitney J says, this video has been so informative. Thank you so much for this conversation. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, guys, we're at 7 o'clock. I didn't make it to 6:30. I never do. I don't know why. I've got to get better at my time, right? Hovena says, Tamara, I'm so grateful for coming across your channel. Thank you so much. Glad to have you as a subscriber. Says, the world needs more people like you on this earth. Thank you so much for that humbling comment. Thank you. That's so sweet. Kevin the Oculist says, the best observations I have with CPTSD and adult trauma has been the very wise Tamara. That's so, so sweet. Thank you. There are other videos on my channel. If you guys want to learn more about this, I'm going to post them in the description box as soon as this goes off. So stick around for all of those videos if you want to delve in a little deeper into this topic. But I also encourage other YouTubers as well. So you may just want to do a random Google search on traumatic memories. T.I. Stoneman, I don't remember seeing you, so welcome. Glad to have you. We're going to sign off in a second here, but just wanted to welcome you. Says, a lot of people don't understand that when a repressed memory hits, it's as if the event has just happened, or just happened, even if it's years ago. Yeah, it is. It's repressed, but it hits you like it's a brand new thing. You're very, very right about that. Very, very right about that. Jeffrey Robinson, hello and welcome, says, I will soon see my 66th birthday. Wow, that's awesome. And I am a survival of childhood emotional and sexual abuse. But the greatest abuse I endured was from my mother. I'm so sorry to hear that. And I think when you have abuse from a mother, somebody who is supposed to protect you and love you and brought you into this world, the traumatic memories can be way more intense. Think of the movie Mommy Dearest. Mommy Dearest. And I can post that in the description box as well. It was a very traumatizing movie, and it can kind of demonstrate how childhood trauma from the hands of a mother can impact you. Um, Keisha Monique, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in another live chat this week. Welcome. Okay, Nancy R., thank you so much for saying that. Welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Yes, you're welcome, Poppy444. Glad it was helpful. Elizabeth Pepper, I don't know if I welcomed you, but welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Yes, you're welcome, Mama Lena. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Just want to make sure. Raymond Vincent Garcia says, what is it called when a person uses someone's emotions, triggers trauma to move a certain direction? If that makes sense. Mm, can you post that comment in the comments section for me, Raymond? I need time to think about that. I'm going through my mental like bank. I'm like, it's not clicking for me. Maybe break that down for me in the comment section, and I will definitely answer it for you. I'll answer it for you. Love Faya. Ooh, look at that. Like that. Welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, I've been bringing up childhood memories in my 40s due to recent stresses. Yeah. Yep, that can happen. Going through menopause, having a baby, going through a midlife crisis, all of that can bring up those trauma memories. Okay, guys, we're going to sign off. We're going to sign off. I'm looking at you guys, and you guys have awesome comments, questions, and I just hate that I have to move on and sign off. Dragon Man Assassin, thank you very much for that super chat. Thank you. Love you guys for all of them. Appreciate you. Yep. Wait a minute. I feel like I missed someone. Hold on. Before I sign off. Oh geez, what did I do? Bear with me, guys. I don't want to lose anyone, and I feel like I just skipped over someone that was important. Hmm. Did I Havana? What did I say? Is it not Havana? I don't know what I do from 1 minute to the next. If you lived with me, you would laugh every second. You would literally laugh every second because I do things and I'm like, come on, you're smarter than this. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So glad, Kim. Glad this was helpful. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for that, fairy girl. Yeah, doesn't he? Isn't that wonderful? I'd be so thankful if I had that. I think it's wonderful when you have a partner that says, I'm going to watch all these videos and see if I can help my wife. I think that's so, so sweet. I love it. Anaphylaxis says, thank you again, Tamara. I missed the earlier part, but I'll be watching from the beginning. Thank you so much for that. Glad to hear that. And you're welcome. You're welcome. Love you too. I'm going to sign off, guys, because I can keep going down all of your comments. Let me say hello to Jasmine Wilby before we go. Thank you so much for that. Glad you love these videos. Froze again. I just thought I wouldn't say anything because it froze again. Felicia Share, hi. Glad to see you. Haven't seen you in a long time, and welcome. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, guys. You're welcome, Cheryl. I'm so glad this was helpful. Thank you for the dabs, fairy girl. That's so cute. I'm just going to say good night, guys. I don't want to stretch this any longer. Hope this was really helpful to you. Let me know if you want me to continue this conversation. I'm going to post in the description box below for you sometime tonight before Sunday the videos that I've done in the past on trauma memory, so that you could leave this video and start like learning other things. If you want me to continue this conversation, let me know in the comment section. If you have questions I couldn't answer, let me know in the comment section. Otherwise, have a wonderful start to the beginning of, I think I said start, beginning, whatever, to the new week coming up. I hopefully will see you next Friday. Good night, guys. Bye-bye.